Hello, my friends. We are live once again. Another show. I love doing these shows with Sabrina Sabs. We always have a good time. So, as soon as we booked with Katie Hopper, I knew we had to bring Sabrina Sabs. How you doing, Sabrina?
Doing good.
You just talked to Professor Richard Wolf.
Yes, that was a good conversation.
I'm jealous because Professor Wolf was one of the people that taught me a lot when it comes to the class war. So I always want to complain with capitalism about it. RJ and Jackie had a chance to do it here. Looking forward to seeing that. Katie Hopper will join us in about 5 minutes. Thank you everyone for watching. She will, like I said, she'll be here very soon. Racco left its agenda. Shout out to you, my friend of the show. He said I like this combo too. Um, Yep. Cheers. Like we have a lot of good shows for you coming up. We got the main panel tomorrow as well, and then like once again, I'm putting overtime because we have a special evening show. I am gonna do. We're gonna have Max Blumenthal on at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and then after he's come on, we're gonna have Jordan Charlton from Status Quo that will come on at 8 p.m. Eastern. So we give you guys a lot of content. So support us as Kofi as well if you are enjoying the content. Um, what do you have on down the pipeline, Sabrina?
Do what? Sorry, I was
Well,
looking at the
what
chat.
I said, what else do you have down the pipeline? I know you're coming out with the Professor Richard Wolf interview.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be going on to. I have a couple of show appearances coming up. Um, Sorry, my calendar's getting kind of busy. I'm going on to Chris's show. He's associated with Eleanor Goldfield, which you guys may have saw. I already interviewed her. Next Wednesday, July 14th at 7 p.m., me, Afeni, and Meg are going to be on Misty's show called Bitch on the
That
MCSC
show is
network.
dope.
So that'll be fun. That's what I have so far, other than regular news clips. But every day is changing.
I just update in the chat. Now you guys know Katie is gonna join us very soon. Anyone who watch my stuff know I like to shoot this shit a little bit before my guests join. And some people was asking me some question when me and CJ was live because this is breaking today. The Haitian leader was killed. Uh, Jovenel Moise. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. And the country of Haiti is just another tragedy of U.S. intervention
Yep.
that Joe Biden is responsible for. And I want to share this as well to give you guys some background to let you know what kind of person we're dealing with. Oh, wait, hold up. Because this Moise guy, he's not a good guy, and he was another United States puppet. Because the Haitians are another country that the United States punish whenever you resist their Western capitalist imperialist system. So all the problems in Haiti you see because of the United States imperialism, which we're gonna talk about a little bit with Katie Hopper as well. All right, now let me share this so you guys can get a little bit more context into the leader that was killed today. Um, Here I'm gonna share this. This is what the Gray Zone Aaron Mate, friend of the show, was reporting. No to dictatorship while Haitians are protesting U.S. backed Moise. Um, Haitian president. This is a guy who apparently died, so it's important to know who we are talking about and reflect on people's legacy in this kind of moment, right? Jovenel Moise has cracked down on a wave of popular protests as he tries to cling to power, while tens of thousands of Haitians have been taken to the street in the face of government repression. The Biden administration is backing Moise's effort to remain in office for less than at least another year. This is a trend, and this is why this is important to cover foreign policy because when you look at states like Colombia, when you look at states like Guatemala, when you look at Israel, when you look at Saudi Arabia, who is going after and killing journalists, there's a repeated pattern of the United States constantly backing the capitalist neoliberal fascist party when you have left wing worker movement. So with the situation in Haiti, that's exactly what that's about. On top of that, you have the United States who put harsh immigration laws on these countries like Haiti because a lot of people don't know this during the Trump administration and even now. In 2019, 40% of the people that were in ICE was Haiti immigrants. This is directly because of U.S. policy and destabilizing that country. All these issues connect. This is why we cover these issues. This is why it's important to acknowledge what happened in these other countries that lead to an immigration crisis. Yeah, Katie should be joining us here very soon. This pretty much wraps to what we was gonna talk about anyway. When I have my show, I always want to learn, and we go through these stories together. Like this is still a developing story, but it is important to know the entire context behind what happened in Haiti and what the United States is responsible for. There is one video that we can play because I saw it just to give more background into why Joe Biden is not the lesser of two evils by any stretch of the imagination. Because we talking about the crisis in Haiti. Check this out, guys. Share screen. I still haven't tweeted. I still haven't tweeted the video out yet. Actually, I still gotta do that. Anyway, slavery. This is a great account. Waiting on Biden. He pretty much hold Biden accountable for his crimes, all that stuff. A slavery revolt built Haiti into the first black republic in the world. As punishment, they were occupied, sabotaged, and embargoed into poverty and instability by the United States. And this is what Biden and his ideology always been regarding Haiti. Now let's hear him out himself. It's only 9 seconds.
If Haiti, a god-awful thing to say, if Haiti just quietly sunk into the Caribbean or rose up 300 feet, it wouldn't matter a whole lot in terms of our. If Haiti.
This is the guy that is supposed to be considered the lesser of two evils. And this is why we say Trump is just like Biden, right? Trump referred to Haiti as shithole countries.
Katie's here, Nick.
Okay. All right, let me I'll close this here. Hello, Katie. How you doing?
Hi, good. You? Oh, hi, Sabby. How are you?
Hey, we got
Hello.
Sabby with us as well. Thank you for
Awesome.
joining,
I had to
Katie.
respond to you. Sorry, I have to get back.
We were just I was doing a little breakdown of what was going on in Haiti and how that connects to the United States U.S. empire. And that's what we cover on our show. And that's why I like about what you do as well, because at Hampton Leftists, we like to have fun. We don't like to take ourselves too seriously. But at the same time, we still have to cover these very, very important stories and issues. And that's what I see you do at the Katie HALPER show. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much. Oops. Whoops. Hate when that happens. Thanks for having me on. I'm just trying to make sure I get my correct speaker on. I know this happens all the time when I have people on who have their own podcasts or live stream shows where somehow when they're doing other ones, they their stuff is not in order. So I'm just making sure that I have my correct audio set up. It says it is, but
yeah, I think I can hear
I
you
sound okay.
well.
All right.
A1, how the stream's going? Chat, let us know if you guys hear and see anything perfectly well. One thing, the main focus I have as a citizen journalist, as I said again, is covering state violence, foreign policy, the class war as well. And something that you brought up, and I talked to my friends about this before, I covered the issue in Israel-Palestine. I take that very seriously because I see a lot of connections between the struggles that the Palestinian goes through in the African-American community. And a lot of people don't even know this. They have a George Floyd mural in Gaza because Palestinian and African-American solidarity goes back decades and decades. And I say this as a black man. Me and Sabrina had this conversation before. There's nothing that disgustes me more when people apologize for the crimes of Barack Obama and the Black Congressional Caucus by pulling the race card. Right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, I think that's something that I do a lot of not mea culpaing because sorry, I have Rob and D'Angelo in my mind because we talked about it today on Useful Idiots. But I think one of the things that was so brilliant, and not in the sinister conspiracy theorist way necessarily, but that was so brilliant about Barack Obama's presidency was that his race, the racism he faced, I should say, was such an effective shield. Like, I remember spending a lot of time just talking about, look how racist these Republicans are against him, which they were. I'm not downplaying that. You know, the you lie thing. Remember? I don't know. You guys are younger. Well, I actually don't know how old you are. I don't want to make any assumptions. But I will say that I remember watching live during the State of the Union when this guy, Joe Wilson, I believe is his name, pointed at Obama and said, "You lie," when he said something about like healthcare. And, you know, I remember talking about that a lot and probably writing about that a lot. And it's not that that wasn't racist. It's just that I spent a lot of time talking about that and not about, you know, his drones, which also are racist. And I would argue had much more of a concrete impact on people's lives and deaths than, you know, a disgusting display of disrespect, and, you know, white privilege and, you know, blatant racism that was exhibited by the guy who said, "You lie." So that may be a kind of indirect way of responding to what you were saying, but I do think that it was a great way to be distracted. And yeah, so that, I mean, it's funny, Keith Ellison, I remember seeing him back at Netroots Nation, which I used to actually like do things with them. Now all those people hate me at Netroots, like Daily Kos and all them, but we used to be friendly. And I remember Keith Ellison speaking there and saying, like, when we can walk with the president, at that point it was, you know, Obama, when we can walk with the president, we should walk with him. And when we have to walk ahead of him, we have to walk ahead of him. And it was like, oh yeah, that's true, which should be obvious, right? But I think there was so much, like, there never had been a black president, and there was so much vitriol. And then you have people like Hillary Clinton saying she couldn't drop out because we all remember what happened to Bobby Kennedy, which is like, oh, like, leave those things to your husband, Hillary. Like, Bill is a skilled liar and politician. Hillary, it doesn't like roll off the tongue that way. Anyway, so yeah, that's again. I think I had
that's a good connection, because what I try to explain to people, if you think you are fighting white supremacy by supporting the Democratic Party, you are being delusional. They are the party of the police state. They are the ones who support these policies that siphon wealth from our communities. For example, I showed earlier on my show, Joe Biden was the chief architect of criminal asset forfeiture.
Yeah.
Criminal asset forfeiture affects the black community at a 60% rate. Now, civil asset forfeiture steals more wealth from the working class than criminals do. Now, add the two things up. Why is racial income inequality so bad? Because of the policies that Joe Biden implemented, correct? You have anything you want to add, Sabrina, before I move on?
No, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying.
And one of the reasons I say this, because one of my litmus tests, and one thing I've been bringing up as I was covering Joe Biden's campaign, and one thing that terrified me is the idea that Joe Biden was openly running to Trump's right on the issue of law enforcement and foreign policy. He was criticizing Trump for not being strong enough on Israel. He was calling him weak on Russia. And his criticism of Venezuela was that he didn't get the coup done. It wasn't.
Get it done. No, exactly. No. His criticism was that, Maduro was still in power, right?
Yeah, he was like, if you elect me, I actually get rid of this authoritarian, even though I supported all these other authoritarians like Moise, who just killed in Haiti. And we have a track record of supporting authoritarians like Ivan Duque in Colombia. Yeah. But it depends if you got oil reserves like Venezuela or not, right?
Right.
That's what it's really about.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it was very scary to watch. I remember Howard Dean trying to like bait Trump, saying like your friends, saying something about Assad and Russia. And it's like, you guys, your entire narrative is that Trump is this Cheeto, Mussolini, erratic, suffering from dementia, rogue, thug, who you also would like to ratchet things up with North Korea and Russia. Like, what is the end game? Like, I never understood that, except it was just such blind, weird, like Cold War nostalgia. And it made it, I think, very clear that for a lot of these people, their problem with Trump was much more one of like decorum and form and aesthetic than it was of policy. And that was always interesting to watch. Because again, I'm like, what do you want? Do you want him to go to war with like Putin? You say Putin is very bad. You say, oh, thank you, Isaac. You say all these things, and I just don't get how it's going to end up. Like, again, what's the game plan? And so in that way, I do think there were times when Trump was, when Biden was running to Trump's left. I think the saber rattling that Biden has engaged in is disgusting. I mean, I think that, Trump was a was full of it. Obviously, I mean, wow. Breaking news, guys. I just said something super deep, and I hope everyone remembers where they were when Katie Halper said this. But he pretended to be more of he never pretended to be anti-war. He was an isolationist. And this is another thing that really drives me crazy about certain segments of the left, when they think that they're like dropping knowledge and bringing the receipts. Yeah. And they're like, he's not anti-war. It's like, literally nobody on the left ever thought Trump was anti-war. Nobody. We only thought that maybe opportunistically he had a kind of xenophobic nationalism that happened to reject certain forms of imperialism, certain forms, never on an intellectual level or a political or ideological one, just that it happened to intersect at certain times with not being as interventionist. And not because he's anti-war, not because he's pro-peace, not because he cares about brown people abroad. Like, sorry if I have this expression on my face. I just have had so many people like try to break this down as if we don't already know that. Like, literally, show me the person on the left who really thought Trump was anti-war or anti-imperialism. But he wound up, killed Soleimani. Ron Kalik likes to say that for a lot of libs and blue check libs, like, Trump was only presidential when he was bombing a country. That's when he became presidential. So yeah.
The criticism of him was that he wasn't a good steward of the military-industrial complex.
Yeah,
and I'm very happy that you brought up the fact that their opposition to him wasn't based on policy. It was based on pure aesthetic and the fact that he wasn't a good manager of the capitalist system. They don't really attack the system itself. It's just they attack the manager. So I was worried because when we talk about the issue of police violence, when we talk about immigration justice, they was playing Biden as the solution, because their solution is, okay, we just need a better manager. Now, go ahead, Katie.
No, definitely jump in, Sabi, also, if you want to, because I've been talking a lot, and Nick, keep jumping in. You want me to pass?
Sabi, you got anything you want to add to that?
I was just going to add, I'm glad you brought that up, Nick, because one of the things that Chuck Modi said when he was actually covering the protest in DC is he said that, like, after Biden won, or after Trump lost per se, he said that a lot of the protesters went home, as if the problem was solved.
Yeah, that is one of the major dangers of Trump, right? Which is that, sorry, excuse me, I always do this. I'm not trying to be cute. Of Biden, which is that, people let their guards down. And I'm not pretending. I see some comments saying that, that despite Trump being less warmongering than other president, he's still of course he propped up the military industrial complex, phenomenal mysticism. We're totally right. And he did things that were not just propping it up. It wasn't just like a passive thing. He, again, Soleimani, Syria, he actually was harder. Aaron Mate points this out all the time. He was actually more belligerent towards Russia than Obama was, arming Ukraine. And you have these Democrats who are like out of Red Dawn, the 80s movie with, I can't even remember who, but super like Cold War movie, talking about this as if they're literally from, a movie from the 80s. Sorry, there was a really circular way of saying the same thing twice, starting and ending with movie from the 80s. And punchline. So ignore that. I mean, focus on the content. Forget my setup. But
we hear you. We hear you.
What was it? What was I saying right before Patrick Swayze? Thank you. Something about Trump aesthetic. I can't remember, but it'll come back to me.
Yeah, I know.
Now, and you guys tell me the comments because I get way too ADD. So you tell me the comments that you want me to respond to.
Yeah, the idea, and this is why I hit Trump fans on all the time. I love talking to Trump fans because I just love mocking them because Trump was running and he was hitting Hillary back when he had the Bannon strategy before he went full One News Network, low information, low IQ like campaign that led him to lose by 8 million votes. I mean, you had a guy who had a horrible record and he decided to pretend that his campaign was being ran by Bernie Sanders, the most popular senator in the country. How does that make sense? That's a horrible strategy. Anyway, my point is, before I go on a tangent, my point is, back when he had like the Bannon strategy of trying to be a right-wing populist, he was hitting Hillary Clinton on Goldman Sachs. And he was hitting her on her warmongering back in the day, back when he actually knew how to run a campaign.
Right.
The 2020 campaign was a joke.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's again, and it's like, you're not, we all know this, that it's not like he would, the thing about Trump that was so, his leg up on everyone has always been, and I think his leg up on Bernie was the short, it's such a mixed metaphor. His leg was shorter with Bernie than on anyone else, because what he had going for him was he had an open hypocrisy. Like, his hypocrisy wasn't hypocritical because he never claimed to be consistent or have any moral high ground or have any moral narrative or ideology. So whenever he could do whatever he wanted, basically. Honestly, the only thing I think that people could have ever gone after him for, well, COVID happened. And I think that if they had shown more that he screwed over like American workers, and if there, I honestly think that they probably, a lot of his racist fans would have been turned off by certain narratives. Anyway, but my point is that he was very good at framing debates. He would just go after people from the left and from the right. He wasn't hamstrung by any ideology because he didn't care, and he never claimed to have any. So it was amazing to watch him on the debates go after Hillary Clinton for using the term super predator, which was awful. But this is a guy who ran and, you know, wrote in the 80s in the Daily News, I think. I can't remember which New York newspaper. I think it was the Daily News. But he basically argued for reinstating the death penalty because of the Central Park 5. What is what are we supposed to call them? It's not Central Park 5. There's a name that's like more, I can't remember, the more progressive.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, the people who were, you know, basically, as we know, they were then freed. He opposed the settlement that they got. So this guy, why am I bringing this up? He's an incredible racist, and yet because he has no intellectual coherence, and I'm not like praising Hillary Clinton, but she has a shtick. Her shtick is that she has some ideology. So when she's a hypocrite, which she is, and unlike Bill, she's not a very good liar. So when she's a hypocrite, it's like, it's not a good look. When Trump's a hypocrite, it's fine. It's on brand. So that's why he was able to go in any direction.
You have anything you want to ask, Sabrina?
Yeah, it's true. And then also, like, Trump didn't have any political experience like Hillary Clinton did. And we were able to look back at that and see where she probably didn't make some of the best, like, decisions.
Right. And it was also, she had, in some ways, the worst of all worlds, right? Because she was affiliated fairly. This was not a sexist thing to judge her by. If she had been, like, abroad in another country, if she had been at home, fine. You don't get to hold her responsible for her husband's policies. But she was stumping for him. She was talking for him. She talked about the super predators, right? So she also had NAFTA associated with her. And she was, not only did she have a record that was really, I mean, bad, just like Honduras, right? When she was at the State Department, but she also looked like a goody two shoes. And she was a resume candidate. And look, there's sexism, there are double standards. If you're a resume candidate and a dude, I think you get away with it a lot more than if you are and you're a woman. But that aside, we can take that into the calculation and also acknowledge that, yeah, there was a lot. She didn't look like she felt people's pain. She really didn't. She didn't. And to her credit, other politicians besides a handful who actually do feel it, like, just fake it better than she does. And I don't think she ever sold anyone on that. And her thing was basically, you know, we're going to keep the Obama era going. This is the Obama coalition and the Obama consensus, and everything's going to be great. And this guy is disgusting, which he is. But the way that they highlighted his disgustingness was not the way they should have highlighted it. And it wasn't in a way that, like, resonated with people as much as it could have and should have. And, like, going the Russia angle, it just, I think, showed how out of fucking, can I curse on this?
Yeah, they demonetize us anyway, so
okay.
might as well have fun.
Yeah. Like, it was so out of touch. Like, really, this is what you think is going to turn the people around? Like, you either needed with Trump, you either wanted to you wanted to convert his supporters, or you wanted to get back the people who stayed home, or the people who went from Obama to Trump, or just didn't care about politics, right? Like, any combination of those. You think any of those groups of people cared about Russia? It was just ass covering, and, like, it was ass covering. And, you know, I keep quoting, shout out to all my guests and fellow streamers and stuff. But, like, big shout out to Aaron Mate, who I think I quote him on this more than he quotes himself. He came up with this term called the What racket protection program. Of course, now I'm butchering it. If anyone's watching this, someone remind me. But the racket protection program, basically, and that's not it, but it has racket in it. And it's basically how all these people cover their own asses. And we know this from that book Shattered, by the way, which no one's ever doubted the veracity of. That they, the night Hillary lost, they sat over pizza and said that they were going to put it on the Russians. The Russians used interchangeably. And that's what they did. And it makes sense because, then they didn't have to, all these consultants and these hacks could keep their jobs. It wasn't her fault. It wasn't the policy's fault. It wasn't that she supported TPP. Remember that? And Bernie, oh my God. Remember when Bernie, pushed her on TPP and people were like, Bernie and Trump both oppose TPP. It's like, you know who else opposed TPP? Like literally every liberal organization, forget our people's organizations, like your guys' people, like now National Organization of Women, like Sierra Club, all these like totally milk toast liberal organizations, because that's how bad the TPP was. And this is another thing. It kind of goes back to my frustration when people are like, Donald Trump isn't anti-war. Don't be played. It's like, we know that. There is political opportunism. And you know what? Sometimes Donald Trump and Bernie are going to be on the right side. Both of them are going to be on the right side. And it's not because Bernie's bad. It's actually because Hillary sucks so much that she was on the wrong side of that issue. Just like Trump pulling out of, when I saw liberals get really upset that Trump was being less belligerent with North Korea. I was like, again, what do you want to have happen? Like, I don't
Have you seen their bloodthirsty comments regarding Putin?
Oh,
and when they had the meeting with Biden and Putin, there's a lot of fake posturing that goes around with Russia. That's why I'm glad he brought up the RussiaGate nonsense, because I'm very critical and I'm constantly covering the crimes of the Biden administration. And a lot of people don't know. Everyone said, why you don't attack Republicans and Trump? When Trump administration started, I did the same thing. This is why I knew you guys were full of it. Because as someone who was really trying to attack Trump on the real issues, I was seeing you guys go with RussiaGate. That didn't make any sense. Right. I'm like, I want to go after the real corruption. I want to go after the fact that he's literally being a Saudi Arabia puppet because they are investing into his properties. But was they talking about that? No, they was bringing up RussiaGate nonsense. They were talking about Stormy Daniels all the time. Like,
I know. And what about that weird like slut shaming stuff that they engaged in? Like that porn star this and porn star that. He hangs out with porn stars.
You see how
and the Melania stuff too. Oh my God. Do you remember Joanne Reed managed to get like 3 things wrong in one tweet about her? She was like, she's from Slovak. She said that Ben Norton responded to it. She said she was like from the wrong country. If you just Google Joanne Reed Melania.
I'm gonna look for it.
Please look it up. Yeah.
I think that's worth watching because I think I may have seen it. I think you may have triggered a memory in me.
Yeah, it was a depressed memory.
Joy and Reed, Melania, but yeah, they would attack Trump on like I'm like, okay, you guys are slut shaming, being misogynist, all at once. It all was gross, like socially conservative attacks in a way against Trump. Constantly about tone. I'm like, and I never had the Trump derangement syndrome. We did get right back into this main topic very soon.
Right.
Because, like, how can I have Trump derangement syndrome when you guys are like him? You guys are friends with Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah.
We did get back to that topic soon. I'm having fun. So we did get back to that because Kamala Harris is good friends with Benjamin Netanyahu, who is literally an ethno-fascist.
Yeah.
You guys claim Donald Trump is a white nationalist. Right. So the worst claim you guys have against Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu is worse than that. You guys understand that, right? What was you about to add, Katie?
No, it's funny because you have people who like privilege protection racket. Sorry, that's the term that Aaron uses. Privilege protection racket. That's Aaron Mate's term for how all these entitled consultants had to blame everything on Russia, because if they didn't, they would have to look at their own mistakes. And all these political consultants and politicians would actually have to acknowledge that certain policies pushed by Hillary were not popular. So anyway, but what you were just saying is, it's a really important point because, and there's kind of a shorthand, for better or for worse, a lot of people are like, wait, what do you mean? But Netanyahu's a white nationalist, but Israel, they, the Holocaust. And by the way, Holocaust survivor family in Israel. So don't come at me as like some anti-Semite, or if you want to call me self-loathing Jew, okay, but that's still not appropriate, but at least use the correct terminology. Thank you very much. But here's the thing, like it's very easy. We'll get into why Netanyahu actually is a white supremacist, but in case you're just like on a drive-by like discussion, you don't have a lot of time to break everything down and explain all this stuff. Netanyahu is very good friends with overt anti-Semites, right-wing white supremacists who run the government in Poland and Hungary. And so, yes, exactly what you were saying. I guess basically I took a lot longer to explain something, and I was trying to show people how they could do a shorthand. But it's important. We can get back to that later. But yes, you're totally right. And that's another, I mean, it's like one thing when people, I bring that stuff up with Netanyahu a lot, because the fact that he was close with right-wing anti-Semites, because I do think strategically sometimes, not just in like a, I'm gonna say what's on my mind and, call people out. That is also fun. But there is value in actually, I think, for some people, like, and I'll get attacked for this, but I do think that we need to reach people who aren't already with us, right? And I think with Israel, there is that issue a lot. And you have people who don't understand, like they come from Holocaust surviving families, or they don't. They've just been raised in this, raised with certain stories. And again, I was going to say mythology, but that sounds like I'm not denying anything. It's just the way that the Holocaust has been weaponized. I mean, the Holocaust happened. It's real. It's documented, obviously. And then there has been a weaponization of it. So no one's obviously saying it. There's no doubt. I can't believe I'm saying this. Why am I saying this as if there's any question? Okay.
Yeah, it's just how can they be victims of the Holocaust and then do the same thing to Palestinian people?
Yeah,
that is why we have Jewish allies.
Yeah,
like yourself, that is one to speak up on this.
Came up with that.
Sure. That was Finkelstein was talking about as well, when someone got mad at him for talking about
video.
This is the thing, he was talking about the Palestinian issue.
Crocodile tears.
Yeah, I should find that video. I love it. I watched it multiple times. It's brilliant.
But people, like, this is, I think, an important point to make with people. It's like a gate. It's kind of like a gateway point. So if there are people who aren't ready for whatever reason to understand or to look at, because it's a hard thing to unpack. I got to say, Israel is like the like one of the first pseudo woke institutions. Like, just think about it. Like, they were founded built on a Holocaust, right? Like an attempted extermination, a genocide. Now, that gives people who have fucked up politics a lot of leverage. Like, you want to weaponize that. It's just like when people weaponize trauma to push for policies that actually harm those communities, right? Like, I don't, the pseudo woke, I mean, it's a much more sinister, but basically it's the same idea as breaking up the banks and racism. No, right? The Hillary Clinton line, right? So what I think that for some people who, I think a good place to start with people who were understandably raised, like thinking that the Holocaust was, hot take, awful, right? I think sometimes you can reach them if you just say, look, this guy Netanyahu, he's actually friends with people who are like overt anti-Semites. Like, Netanyahu was buddies with the, I don't remember if it was prime minister or president of Poland, when they were passing a law that said that you couldn't like accuse Poland of having collaborated with the Nazis. Like, they were just occupied. You had to say it that way. You couldn't say that they were involved in the Holocaust. Wow. And it was amazing to watch this, because it's like, Netanyahu tried to push back, and the guy was like not playing around, because that's his shtick. Like, you can't take away his overt anti-Semitism, the Polish guy, because that's what he ran on, is committed to. And so then you had like the Israeli foreign minister, like revolted that Netanyahu was courting this guy openly. And he was like, the Polish people, like, they like nurse on anti-Semitism from their mother's breasts. So all of this just to say that, like, we know a lot of leftists get how, like, you perpetuating ethnic cleansing because you went through a Holocaust is not okay. Like, you don't get that. You don't get a get out of jail free card to do that. But I think that it's like, even for people who have a kind of fucked up never again, like Jews first type of thing going on, like I think you can maybe reach some of those people by just saying like, this is not about anti-Semitism. Because if it were, you wouldn't have Netanyahu being buddy-buddy with these right-wing, ethno-nationalist, non-Jewish states.
I'm glad
So,
you
Katie,
said that.
my
Go
question
ahead,
is like, why would, because this question has come up a lot recently. Some people want to know, like, given everything that, Israelis have gone through with the Holocaust and the history that surrounds that, why would they want to, in turn, do that to another group?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. And I actually think this is going to maybe be a little controversial, but I think that like, there is a history of leftist, radical, solidaristic Jewish history and identity and culture that exists. And we can get into that in another show. I think Norman Finkelstein would probably disagree with me about the extent of it. But it's like people who are oppressed, sadly, don't necessarily become allies. Like we've seen this all over, right? It can lead people to have insight and it can lead people to have a sense of solidarity and empathy, but it can also have the opposite effect. But like, I do think that there's a dangerous, this phenomenon of PEP, progressive except for on Palestine. It's like, you can't really do that. You just can't. And I guess it's like, to me, it's not surprising that they did that. It's like, it's fucked up that they did that because this maybe sounds weird, but like it's lots of nations are founded on terrible things and doing terrible things. What makes Nora Ericott was on my show and pointed this out. She's like, what makes Israel unique is just that it's anachronistic. It's like a time thing. Like this happened in lots of countries but like before, not in our lifetimes. And Israel, of course, presents itself, and the United States presents both itself and Israel as these unique beacons of democracy, which they're legit. I mean, Israel doesn't even pretend, like just legally, to have a democracy, right? It has second-class citizens. There's an occupation. As much as you want to, highlight how problematic the United States is, which it is, we're a little better at hiding it in some ways. We just have it abroad more because it's not like we have
a better propaganda system.
Yeah, we have a better propaganda system. We have a better PR machine. We don't, for various historical reasons, we had already, we genocided a lot of people already. There was slavery already. We continue to do things, and those things have legacies that are still active. And obviously, like you can read the new Jim Crow, these things are not done, but they're done in a less overtly legalistic way than they are in Israel, where you have literal.
They have snipers that shoot kids and journalists.
Oh yeah, no.
And then they get mad when get mad when the UN condemn them. Like you just shot a kid. Like
yeah,
what?
You shot a kid. And then sometimes people come at you and be like, "Whoa, you think the United States wouldn't they defend themselves?" Like, first of all, if they did, we'd be at the protest. Like the United States does do that stuff, and we call our government out on that all the time, and we call them like warmongers. We say there's like, it's not like it's the narrative about like, why Israel? Why are you picking on Israel? It's like, we're not picking on Israel. We are talking about a government that the United States brags about having a special relationship with. You can't you got to pick a narrative, guys. Yeah. Either they're uniquely pro-democracy and unique allies of the United States, in which case you got to kind of point out when they're actually not that at all. I mean, they are actually unique allies of the United States. They are that, but they're certainly not uniquely democratic at all. And then, it's like, of course we're going to talk about Israel. People are like, what about Saudi Arabia? What about North Korea? Like, show me the politician who travels to visit their relatives in Saudi Arabia or talks about how special the relationship with Saudi Arabia is, which is why I always say Israel is like the United States' wife and Saudi Arabia is like the U.S.'s like side piece. Like we don't acknowledge, but we have a relationship with them, but we can't display it the way we do with Israel. So that's why I'm like, why are you? It's not about picking on Israel. It's like there's one country that and it's true. We obviously support Saudi Arabia and Trump. I sometimes I'll say who said it, Trump or Chomsky, because they will say similar things for totally different reasons, right? Like when Khashoggi was killed, and they're like, "Are you going to do anything about Saudi Arabia?" And Trump was like, no, because they just bought a lot of weapons from us. That's exactly what Chomsky would say, but he would like condemn that. And that would be a sign of how terrible the United States is. And
that's why they didn't like Trump, because he would say the quiet stuff out
yeah,
loud.
exactly. Right. Laura Sheehy. Yeah. Laura Sheehy, who I want to give a shout out to. I can't remember her on Twitter. I'm going to find her handle. Oh, it's Black Flag Hag. Black Flag Hag. Laura Sheehy. She does the psychoanalysis. You guys should have her on the show. And she talks about how like Trump is both a pathological liar and a and a radical truth teller, because he does like tell the truth for, he's not speaking truth to power, he's just saying it. I mean, it's an amazing thing to behold.
When you live life that privileged and able to get away with whatever you want, like that has to kill your filter. Like you can just say stuff that you can get away with it.
Yeah.
You can call like Roseanne a pig on like in front of millions of people, and like back in the day, like Howard Dean got in trouble for screaming. But Trump can do like whatever you want.
Exactly. And what a sellout he turned out to be. And Steven Reisner, I want to give a shout out to him also, who's also a psychoanalyst, and he and Lara talk about this a lot. And Steven Reisner is the host of the Madness podcast.
I love how you brought up Khashoggi, because this shows how blue MAGA imitates red MAGA, right? Because Trump is honest. He can be brutally honest at times. And they ask him, they're like, you going to do anything about Jamal Khashoggi? And he said, nah, probably not. We like Saudi. We do business with them.
Yeah.
And I remember liberals were celebrating because Biden and his administration launched a probe into the Khashoggi case. And then that probe found that the Crown Prince was responsible for that. And then the Biden administration like, we're not going to do anything about it. And then the liberals try to pretend that didn't happen. I covered it. A lot of independent news covered it. They didn't cover that at all.
Yeah, no. I mean, why? Biden administration was like, we're being strategic about this. And again, if Trump had done this, like, forget it. He would have been rightly, for the wrong reasons, but we would have been, calling it out. We did call it out, and libs would have been calling it out. But somehow when Biden does it, it's not a problem. It's not talked about. Also, I remember like tweeting out that as Biden could literally have one fewer kid in a cage than Trump. And like Biden defenders will be like, but Trump. And it's true.
Yeah.
Like, where are the libs mad at Biden about his immigration policies?
I have one more thing to add, and I'll pass it to Savvy. But the reason why I bring that up, because those things have real effects. And I covered this on my show. Once again, this is something you're not going to see covered in mainstream media for a lot of reasons. But Biden deciding not to do anything when Saudi Arabia killed Jamal Khashoggi, it actually emboldened them, and they actually came up with a story. Now Saudi Arabia is actually cracking down on dissenters more and journalists that are against the Crown Prince and the empire. I have the sourced up. I'll pass it to Sabrina though. But this is I covered on my show. No one else covered it. It wasn't long ago. They actually cracking down on journalists more because they know the United States is not going to do anything. So there's
they're getting the green light. Yeah.
No, so Biden and what he does has giant consequences. What we had to say, Katie, and I'll pass it back to Sabrina.
No, we now know. I mean, I'm looking for the story. We talked about it today on Useful Idiots, but Biden this week was visited by Mohammed bin Salman's brother. Just reading from Democracy Now! Top U.S. officials hosted the brother of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman Tuesday. The Biden administration has not publicly announced the visit by Deputy Defense Minister Prince Khalid bin Salman amid ongoing pressure to reevaluate the relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. And as you were saying, an intelligence report released in February found that Mohammed bin Salman directly approved the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi. Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki told reporters Tuesday the U.S. was reaffirming its commitment to the nation's longstanding partnership and Saudi defense. Wow, it's almost like they're coming out of the closet on this. Like they're open about their they've gone openly poly with Israel and they're exploring non-monogamy with Israel and Saudi Arabia.
Here's the receipt, as you guys see. Weak U.S. Saudi.
There you go. Right.
United States let Saudi jail more dissidents, says a rights group. And now that led to harsher sentences of critics of the regime. And I want to do this real quickly, and I'll pass it to Sabi. But the Biden administration's failure to impose sanctions on Saudi Arabia Crown Prince has led to increase to severe sentences for political prisoners of the kingdom. So what happened there? The Biden administration enabled Saudi Arabia, just like
yes. Now, yeah, I mean, and it's not like, I mean, I'm not pro sanction, but there are things to be done. Mm-hmm. The United States has a lot to flex when it comes to diplomacy. Obviously, there are deals to be made, and if they wanted to, they would be able to tell Saudi Arabia what to do, right?
Don't do a giant arms deal. Don't fund their genocide.
Yeah, it's not that deep. And that is the thing. Like, I think that, watching Biden say that, we're no longer supporting the war on Yemen. No, we're no longer supporting some parts of the war. We're supporting barely. I mean, it's so absurd. We're supporting the defensive elements of the war. Like Saudi Arabia is defending itself from Yemen. Like, come on, it's fucking under siege. It's like has the biggest cholera, more people, outbreak in history, and children are dying and starving, and people don't have medicines. I mean, it's an absolute, like, the fact that our media is not, this will very soon be something people look back at, like Rwanda and like the Holocaust, and be like, I can't believe we didn't do anything. Like, where are these images? Where are these images? And like that, look, I'm going to get whatever. I'll just might as well get to it. I'll give a shout out to Ronnie Kallick, but like that child, it was terrible. That image of that child from Syria who was like washed up on the shore. It was awful. And like, but where are the other children? Like, where are these starving children of Yemen who look like skeletons? And I'm not talking about some like, tragedy porn. I'm just saying this is something people need to be confronted with. Like, we don't have boots on the ground necessarily, but we are supporting wars. We are like sanctions. That's another thing. Like, sanctions are war. Like, we're not at war. First of all, we're at war with countries, right? But like, even just the sanctions, we're killing people left and right. Like, people don't get that sanctions are murderous. They literally kill people. They deprive them of medicine. They, in very like daily, mundane, unnecessary ways that don't have the kind of news flashiness of a literal explosion, right? Or body parts like being blown up, which of course, another hot take, not good. All those things, terrible. But sanctions doesn't get any of the attention, and it's just daily.
Yeah, they're an act of war.
Yeah,
they're an act of war.
Yeah.
Sabrina, I won't pass it to you.
Yes, sanctions are an act of war. I understand people are saying that's not an act of war. I'm saying that, yeah, it is an act of war. It's not. It's not like official warfare, and that's why people will impose them instead of war. But in the modern context, like, that's how we fight wars. We don't need boots on the ground. Sorry. And that dichotomy is kind of false. And you can like talk to other people. I'm not the expert on that, but like you can talk to Sam. Sorry, I want to give another shout out to Samuel Moyen, whose book Humane Wars is coming out soon. So yeah, this whole thing about, look, we've seen people weaponize the language of war and warfare before, and coups and sanctions. Hillary Clinton did this with Honduras. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to I'm transitioning into something a little bit more I guess lighthearted in a sense. One of the things that we do like to do is we also like to talk about possible solutions.
Oh, that's not fun. Just kidding.
I know. So Nick and I have noticed, and Katie, I'm sure you've noticed this too, but Nick and I have noticed that there hasn't been a lot of leftist unity, like unity on the left. Some people feel it's because of force the vote. Some people feel it goes all the way back to when Hillary was running against Bernie. I wanted to get like your take on this. Like, why do you think we have this divide on the left, and what do you think could be done to fix it?
Why do we have this divide on the left? I mean, I think like what you spoke about, you alluded to two things that are related, but well, no, I'll just repeat what you said. Like, basically, I think there were two phases. One was the Hillary Bernie one, and that is a division that I think was totally necessary. I'm not saying like, yeah, it was a necessary. There were principles. There were clear principles. I think there were lines in the sand. I don't mean you don't ever cooperate or collaborate with people who are Hillary supporters, but there's a very logical distinction. And for me, a lot of people had this with their eyes open or they had this political aha moment with Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street. For me, it was Sanders. It wasn't like I changed my political ideas or my worldview. It's that it changed the way I saw other people's role. Like it changed the way I saw other people as allies or non-allies or in the way of progress or supportive of progress. Because we could all pretend back in the day, depending on where you were on the spectrum, but like a lot of people I know were engaged in politics way to their right, like much more centrist than what they actually believed in, because they believed in electoral politics and there weren't that many options, right? And you can say that that's good or bad, but there was a coherence there, right? Like then Bernie comes in, and I know, of course, I'm a big Bernie fan. He's not without his flaws, and what I'm saying now actually is doesn't have anything to do with whether or not I like him. But for me, it was a very, when you have someone who's more to the left and you're still where you're at, and you can no longer pretend it's because like, oh, I like that idea, but it's just not viable. Once you get someone in the race who's doing as well as Sanders was, despite the entire like media, industrial, political complex trying to block him. Like when you have someone like that, you can no longer pretend that I like Medicare for all. It's a nice idea, but it's not going to happen, right? You can't do that anymore. So a lot of people were just exposed and outed, I think, during the primary. And it was interesting to watch the ways it happened. Like some people, they just had sucky, like shitty politics. Then some people had this weird, like they just, I've said this before, but some people just had issues they hadn't worked through. And like they needed to, because basically they held the country and the world hostage for their own unresolved shit about like, I'm sorry, some like with men. I'm a feminist and I'll like make fun of a lot of things that, men do and get away with. But like there was some like, I'm sorry you're triggered by Bernie Sanders because he reminds you of your grandfather or someone you worked for or someone like people needed to like deal with that, because if that's more important to you than like Bernie Sanders supporting $15 an hour, and you claim to care about people of color and women, and you know that minimum wage earners are overwhelmingly people of color and women, and you're gonna like ride or die with the woman who's against Fight for 15, and you're gonna call the guy who's for Fight for 15 the racist sexist, like there's something happening there. So there was that, and I think that was disturbing. And again, I was talking about this with someone the other night, like, if you want to go after Bernie from the left, sure, that's fine. But like you're going to go after him from like the position of supporting Hillary Clinton or Elizabeth Warren, like show me where they're better on anything.
I go after Bernie all the time, but I always say that you're not going to attack Bernie in the right while I'm around. I'm not going to let that happen. You got to attack him from the left and attack him with some substance. And what you said regarding like a lot of these like fake feminists who support Hillary over Bernie over a lot of like whatever issues. I can't speak on that because I'm a man, but as a black man who speak about this all the time on our show, there's nothing that drove me more crazy than seeing black people support Jim Crow Joe and Hillary Clinton, who wrote the goddamn crime bill. How does that make sense? You got a guy who was arrested protesting segregation. You got a guy who's complicit in institutionalizing it with Joe Biden. How is this a hard decision? So I know. I totally, you on that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like, we were talking about this on Useful Idiots with Norman Finkelstein, and how we were talking about Ta-Nehisi Coates, and Ta-Nehisi Coates' piece on Bernie Sanders and reparations. Like, regardless of where you fall on Coates, where you fall on that piece that he wrote, where you fall on reparations, like one thing is very clear. He grounded his critique of Sanders in the reality that the Clintons are bad on this issue. Like, his whole thing was the Clintons suck. We should expect more from Bernie. But when the rest of when the media, besides like the Atlantic, where he wrote that article, when they reported on it, it was just like Bernie's really bad on reparations. It's like, well, actually, Hillary Clinton has the same thing, and she has a lot more blood on her hands. And as we know, she had, you could literally call them slaves. Like they are technically the prisoners who worked for their house. And look, I'll be real. Like, it would have been great if Hillary Clinton had been like, I'm going to break with history and this racist like slaveocracy that is Arkansas, and I'm going to change the policies and not have like prisoners, incarcerated people working the governor's mansion. I didn't expect her to do that. The Clintons are the Clintons. But what's so galling to me is that she thought it was okay to wax poetic about this in her book, It Takes a Village. Like, how blind are you to how much your head is up your own ass and how much like death and destruction you've caused that you don't even know you shouldn't mention this. The African-American murderers or whatever who were in your house, you know, who were actually, they were the nicer ones. I mean, I don't know if you read, it's like disgusting. And Bill Clinton, he, for political, he thought it was a good idea to fly back from campaigning to execute Ricky Ray, Richter, who was executed. He was intellectually disabled. He asked if he could save his last meal for later. And Bill Clinton went back to Arkansas to oversee his execution. And so when people are talking about like, look, Bernie's no saint. He's not. You can't really be a saint and get that far in electoral politics. There's definitely a lot we can talk about with him, but like he is, and I'll get called, I think he's unique. I do. That doesn't mean he's innocent, but I think he's uniquely, I think for as far as he, like, look at him on Israel-Palestine. And of course, yes, people are like, he's a liberal Zionist. Okay, yes. Is he where I'm at on Israel-Palestine? No. Is he further than anyone else in the Senate on that issue? 100%. Like, I mean, the squad, some of the members of the squad are really good also. But he was, I'm sorry. I know that it's like, it's not me, us, and it's not a personality. But you know what? I'm like, I'm proud to like have a, someone who I like policy wise, and I find his personality endearing. Like, at least I don't have like why people do that with sociopaths like Hillary Clinton. So like, and it's not like I'm quiet about my credit. I don't like talk about him like he's perfect. Yeah.
And
one thing. I'm sorry. Can I just say one thing?
Go ahead.
I can't stand this argument. He voted for the crime bill. Fuck Bernie too. I can't stand this argument. Look, you go at him for whatever you want. He voted for the crime bill because it was an omnibus bill that had Violence Against Women Act, and you can go after that too. And you could say it was a stupid political decision. You could say it was whatever. Here's the thing. That man, Bernie Sanders, spoke about that, tried to get the death penalty out of it, like went after that bill time and time again. So again, I will own that I'm like have rosy, whatever, Bernie tinted glasses on. I love the man. I cut him slack where he doesn't deserve it. I'll still argue that he's the best senator we have right now. But like, come at him or come at me with something real. Like that is I'm sorry, I can't stand that argument. It's like one of them wrote the damn bill. And in this case, Bernie did not write the damn bill. Joe Biden wrote the damn bill, and he bragged about having his name on the crime bill. So that's different for someone who voted for it after trying to change it. That's very different. So just like let's be accurate and honest in our critiques of where Bernie fails, because he does. It's just not in the crime bill.
Yeah, they also failed to mention too that the reason why he ended up voting for it, because it also included the protection against women.
Yeah, the Violence Against Women Act. Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
what Savvy was talking about was the divide, and I give Bernie all the credit in awakening so many people to the left, because I was largely anti-establishment. I didn't have the direction. I didn't know like where did I take this anti-establishment energy, because at that point I was already done with the Democratic Party. Then Bernie came and he helped me become more class conscious. So I give him a lot of credit for that. But that is kind of where it ends, because now we got to go to the next level. Because Bernie started this movement. Now it's up to us to go to the next level. The next level is to actually engage and advocate against state violence, foreign policy. Like, once again, what you say, I agree with 100%, Katie, because I hate the bullshit arguments. I want the real policy-based substantive criticisms. So when I criticize AOC for not speaking on Julian Assange, for when she don't say anything about the Syria bombings, that's legitimate. That's
when
legitimate.
she says stuff about, of course it is. Yeah, you guys, I would never I never have any problem at all with that. I mean, I think I watch your show. I really like it. I think you guys are, I mean, that almost sounds condescending. Like, who cares what I think? But I happen to like really respect your show, and I agree with your takes. And also, there's a difference between disagreeing like on politics and where we stand, and like just canceling people. And that's a whole other discussion. But no, you're right. Like, I would never be Bernie needs to be pushed. Like he 100% needs to be pushed. Of course he does. And in fact, like all politicians, no matter how much we love them, they need to be pushed. Like they want us to be pushing them, even if they look like they don't. Like if we care about them, we need to give them the cover to do the things that we want them to do, right? Like no matter what you think of the person, they like it's just like a law of physics. You need that pressure. So
like even when I wasn't as critical as Bernie, I won't get you back in here, Sabrina, but even when I wasn't as critical of Bernie, I wouldn't get mad when I saw people had good criticism. I'm like, okay,
yeah, of course.
Like I think that makes sense. So when I talk about the divide on the left, it's the people who worship the politicians, and these people are actually a kind of a giant progress to they're a giant obstacle to our progress, right? Because when we push these people and when we get mad at them for being complicit with defunding the police, and they want to defend them at all costs. When they smear Julian Assange reporters because they want to defend them at all costs, that's a problem. That's when things get tricky. Well, your position, I don't think is unreasonable because you're keeping it based on policy. What I don't like is when people make a BS to defend their favorite politicians.
I agree. And someone's saying, sorry, you guys go.
No,
I need to hide the comments. I can't look at them.
Get back to Sabrina.
No, Sabrina, you go.
Thanks. Yeah, I definitely feel like where Nick's coming from with that. Like me personally, I'll be honest, I am further to the left of Bernie. So to me, Bernie was like my best shot. Basically, you know. But I've actually gotten to the point now, after what I've seen with the squad, I just don't have a lot of faith in electoral politics anymore. And it's unfortunate to say that, but it's just based on what I've seen. It's like, fool me once, you know, shame on me, or shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And I don't really know exactly what the solution is, but for me, I'm trying to look at doing things in a different way as to some of the things that we do with FHL, like mutual aid. Like how can we, like, I feel like we need a general strike. And when I talk to people about these things, it's very difficult because the majority of people still want to do electoral politics. And I'm just trying to find ways to show them that the squad and the progressives in the House, they're not the majority. In order for things to change, they would have to be the majority. And I don't see that happening anytime soon because I know what DC is like. I know how DC works. It's just so corporate. So it's like we have to hit the corporations first because they're the ones that have to be affected before any type of policies or any type of politics is going to change. And that's just like my take on that. Like I do understand some people still want to do it, you know, the usual way by going through electoral politics. I just, for one, have been incredibly disappointed, you know, by Democrats, and it started with Obama. So ever since then.
I mean, I think that like, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think part of the reason I was harping on Bernie, honestly, besides how much I like Bernie, I see I'm getting called a sycophant and a stan. That's okay, because I lend myself to that criticism, like 100%. But I think there's something that we have to talk about, which is that like Bernie aside, we have to be both. We have to look at organizing. We have to look at mutual aid for sure, like 100%. And I see Richie, hi Richie, and I see Richie has zero faith in politicians, and I totally like understand that. And I'm not saying this in some like I'm not chastising anyone. I agree with you. I think that like something we have to grapple with though, and this is like for better or for worse, like people like charismatic leaders. Now this isn't just among elected officials. Like people like charismatic leaders. We've learned that the hard way. And all I'm saying is that like not Bernie, forget the Bernie thing. We need to, like, I want us on the left to be realistic about that because we need to be doing stuff like mutual aid. But sometimes there's like there can be some kind of like shaming of the way people coalesce around leaders. And that's like, again, nothing to do with Bernie, right? Like it is a dangerous thing to stand for politicians and stand for leaders. And we can lose our moral compass. We can lose our judgment, right? But we also have to recognize that like the bad people have their charismatic leaders. So we need to cover all the bases. And I think you're totally right. Like mutual aid is so important. But I guess my fear is also like, how do we cover all the bases so that while we're doing that, and we need to make that stuff like exciting. We do, because we have to, that's the other thing. It's like, people get riled up and we have to be strategic and creative. So we have to make things like mutual aid sexy. And I don't know how to do it, but we do. We have to make it fun or sexy. And I'm not being glib or dismissing that people are like dying and that mutual aid is a way to save lives. I'm just trying to figure out like, how do we make it so that people feel excited by this? Because because we have to do that. And again, this is like, I couldn't be like more, I have awe for people who do mutual aid, and I want to donate part of my stream to mutual aid projects. So I'm just being honest about, like, I know, for instance, that it gives me a lot of, like, I love criticizing things. I do. I'm just being honest about it. Like, I love criticizing things. I think that's why Bernie was so appealing to some people. Like, there's real energy in, like, what's the word? Not talking shit, but like calling shit out. Like, that unifies people. Like, there's a lot of, it's a love-hate thing, right? Like, on the other side of love is hate. Like, you hate the bad guys who have blood on their hands, right? Not to sound like weird and corny or like getting into emotional philosophy, but it's true. Like, we need to figure out how to do it in a way and we need to actually make sure that we're targeting the right enemies, right? And we're vilifying the right people, because that's another thing we have to keep bringing it back to, is that it's like it is a small, powerful group of people who we can be united against, and that'll just make the movement more effective. That's like something we actually have a chance at doing. But I totally agree with you, and I think that there are people who have totally abandoned electoral politics, and that's a totally, like, I don't pay that much attention to electoral politics, honestly. Here's one thing I will say, though, and then I'll shut up. One thing I'll say, and I had this discussion with, like, I remember talking about this with Rania Kalik, actually, which is that, and she and I probably disagree with a lot of other people in this who agree with us generally. Like, I do think that there is a concrete difference made in people's lives. Like, as bad as the squad is on certain things, like, I think there's a chance that they will be pushed to vote for the right thing on sanctions. Now, people are going to come back with receipts and show me how they didn't. And that's, of course, true. But there's also, like, I actually think on foreign policy stuff, it's both, like, so fucked, but these little things can have a real ripple effect. I'm not being kumbaya. Like, it's not going to heal. It's not going to solve everything at all. But I think that these things have a concrete enough effect that we can't totally abandon it. But that doesn't mean that, like, you, Sabrina, as your goal, that has to be your focus. And I think too many people do focus on the electoral stuff. I'm just saying that among the people, among us leftists, some of us have to, I think, like, be focused on it. Because if not, all we're left with in the electoral sphere are libs.
Yeah, this conversation is extremely interesting to me, and I have this kind of debate with a lot of different people that value electoral politics, and there's a lot of ground to cover on that. I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time, because we got so many topics to talk about. Do you have time for one more segment, or what's your time?
Sure, yeah. Especially because I have to defend myself. People ask me how old I am.
I know we briefly mentioned it before, but I just want to make sure I'm respectful of your time, because we got so many things to talk about. And regarding that point, I want to add one thing. And I have, ever since I had got a platform, I always have people to my left on my show. And I've been dragged to the left by people like Jackie. And you see people like RJ, my other friend, Hampton Leftists, brothers and sisters, and they taught me a lot. And I started to realize, especially when I see the squad and Bernie Sanders started to disappoint, and I invested a lot of money in the squad, just Democrats. I quit my job and I canvassed for Bernie Sanders in multiple states. There was a lot of sacrifice for me in terms of electoral politics. The question is, was it worth it? Now, what I mean by that is, there are people who are going homeless right now. There are food banks. We have Finney, who got mutual aid that she's running in D.C. We have Rome that's doing tour for the poor. I have people that literally putting their cash apps out there because they're starving to death. Is it worth you to donate to a campaign where they're paying these people $100,000 a year, or should you donate that to a food bank? That's the theoretical debate. And I'm not saying not one answer or another. It's your struggle, and you got to figure out what's the best option for you. But me personally, as someone who don't have a lot of resources, I wish I would donate that money to a food bank now, because they funded the police more. It's like I didn't donate to you to be complicit with funding the police more. Now I'm like, I feel like I wasted that money. Now that's the internal debate, and we can get in line to that in more detail, because I actually see there are a lot of people to my left that disagree with me. So I'm actually outflanking them to the right here, because I actually see the merits in electoral politics and the inside-outside game. The problem is, in America, we have no inside game. A lot of people don't want to admit it, but we have none, because there actually is a value to the strategy, because we had the George Floyd protests. We had activists that wanted to start a general strike. Where was the inside game? Nowhere to be found. Now, so when people start losing interest in electoral politics, that's a direct result of the inside game not doing their job. So if we had someone who was elected and who actually led the way and inspired people, then people will get back to electoral politics. A lot of people have been critical of Nina Turner, but let's say in a hypothetical situation, Nina Turner did exactly what we wanted AOC to do. And she actually did follow the direction of the grassroots activists instead of trying to shut us down. Then people will look at Nina Turner, okay, we need more people like her. And then people will get into electoral politics. The people who are losing interest in electoral politics, like Sabrina, that's a direct result of your politicians not following through on their promises. So do not attack people. Don't attack people because they're not invested in electoral politics. Attack the politicians who lost their favor in the first place. Anything you guys want to add to that?
Sabrina, do you want to? I have something, but I want to.
Sure. Again, Nick, agreed. It's just like, yeah, it's just like, it's one of those things. Like, I like to see what people are going to do first before I decide whether or not I'm going to continue to support them. And it's just over the past couple of years, I've seen it. And so when people say to me that the squad is like new, I'm like, nah, dude, like AOC's on her second term. I mean, yes, Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, you know, they're new. But it's just, again, after you see these things for, you know, years and years, and you just think that every time the next person is going to be the one.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I've felt like the next person is going to be the one. Now, that being said, it's one of those things where I still interview like grassroots candidates, like on my show. I'll still interview them because I do know that there is a large segment of the population that does want to like participate in electoral politics. So if they're going to do that, I would prefer that they vote for someone who's running a grassroots campaign. But I'm usually upfront with them about that when I do that and let them know I personally just don't have a lot of faith in electoral politics. But that's just my take on that.
No, and I hope I wasn't coming off, Nick, as chiding anyone. Like, I don't think.
No, I didn't know.
You're just saying in general, like, because I think that like not when I say like we need people, I mean, I think on the left, some people. And I'm not encouraging anyone, by the way, to give their money to like campaigns. I mean, I'm saying that like, I think that my issue is more that some people on the left need to like, I guess I do think when it comes to foreign policy stuff, there can be changes that are made. And again, they have like, they're so pathetic. Like Richie said in the comments, like Sanders is the best senator and it's such a low bar, and it's true. But I still think it makes a difference in people's lives. But I'm in no way telling people how they should prioritize their stuff. I don't think it makes sense to prioritize supporting electoral politics. I'm saying I personally find it kind of interesting. And I think that there's a segment of the left. This is what I'll say. I think there's a segment of the left that engages. And some of us, I'm like, well, I'm just someone who, like, to the extent that any media has any power, right? I think there's segments of the left who need to not. I have people I agree with, like 100% on foreign policy, and I think that it's not like I don't want to give up on the squad because I have faith in them. I don't. I just think that there's certain things that should be pursued, and I'm not necessarily going to do it. Like, I'm not going to be donating to something. We can be in the streets and when we're in the streets, we're like pushing for social movements, but it also has a ripple effect in the other way where it does push politicians. So I'm for all of that. Sorry, my dad is like really mad. I'm sorry. My dad is texting me, and can you guys hold on 1 second?
No
it's
like
problem. a medical thing.
No, it's no problem, Katie.
All right. He's fine. I can't reach him now. Anyway, my dad's okay. He's just
let us know how you're doing on time as well.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up. But my whole discussion about like electoral versus non-electoral is not a prescription for anyone. It's not a judgment of anyone. Like, I happen to think that there's some people need to be shitting on politicians. Some people need to be like agnostic on them, and some people need to be defending them, but with cred. Like, I'm not going to be an effective, by the way, and no one pays me. Like, no, I'm not representing a campaign. No, I'm not going to be effective to the extent that I believe in certain ideas. If I pretend that the squad is like pure and has never done the wrong thing ever, like, that's not going to get me just on a strategic level, tactical level. Like, no one's going to pay attention to me. So I'm not going to be a good person like I'll have no cred, and no one will believe in trying to push the squad anywhere. So like everyone has different lanes to play. So I'm not saying like we need to do all of this stuff. And when I brought up the role of charismatic leaders, that's just something I think we have to grapple with. Even if it's like we can make an alternative. Look, if we want to create a culture that makes it like provides an alternative, I'm just saying this is not about you guys. I'm saying in general, I think the left, I think that it's great that we see the power in mass movements, and that's what makes us the left and not like libs, for instance. Like, and that's really important. And then we just want to figure out how to make it fun, which I think we can be honest about. Because if we want to win, that's just something we have to look at. How do we make it fun or like exciting? And I don't have the answers at all.
Yeah,
we need a TikTok dance.
Yeah, that's, I mean, you know, and sometimes the left can shit on that stuff. And I used to do that. And I get it. It's like, but we do, if we just seed like the serious work, like if that's just our only, and you guys are not doing this at all. I love the show. I love that. Like, I think that I try to do this too, right? We mix like important stuff with entertaining stuff, but like we need to be thinking like that on the left in general.
Yeah, I actually have a lot of beef with what I call no fun leftists.
Yeah.
I hate
you think
no
that
fun
helps?
leftists.
That's not how we're going to have the revolution.
Me and my friends, we joke around all the time, and that's the lighthearted movement that we must keep around. And that was, I talked to Dr. Cornel Weston. That's what he said. He said when you have a movement, you got to have a movement with soul. And he literally told me that on his interview. You got to have fun while you're doing that. And when you were sharing your answer, I don't see anything unreasonable with what you're saying here. Everyone have different fights and different struggles, because I advocate for ballot initiative as well. And now you got ballot initiatives in Missouri getting blocked by Republican senators. So in these kind of situations, you can't blame me for wanting to vote those people out. And so my thing comes from, you got to look at your individual situation and decide what's best for you. I have to tell you what my point of view is. And if you have a lot of resources, I'm coming from a more poor working class position, right? But if you got a lot of resources, we love class traders. We love that. Yeah. So donate to mutual aid and donate to your campaign of choice. My thing is, I'm saying if you got a finite amount of resources, give more thought into how you can actually help people instead of only being invested in electoral politics, because that's what they want you to think. When they cover all these issues, how do they cover it? They cover it in the lens of electoral politics. Oh, defund the police gonna hurt the Democrats.
Right.
Oh my God, how are we gonna win?
Evidence. They never have any evidence.
Yeah, I can go all day into that, but they were like, how can you win the white suburban women? I'm like, what about our communities? They always talk about things in electoral politics. So what I tell people is to consider all the other alternative and stop playing too much stock. That's why I didn't think anything you said was unreasonable there, Katie. I think these conversations are important because I think there are a lot of people that need to think this out a little in a little bit more clear-headed way. I see some people say stuff, and I'm like, do you completely thought that out? Do you think about long-term strategies and how we can get stuff done? Because this is the thing, and I'll pass it right back to you, Sabrina, here very soon. Even the people who are invested in electoral politics, you need us. You need people who are not, because your plan is to primary the neoliberal Democrats. So why are you spending your time attacking tankies or lefties when we are attacking the neoliberals that you need a primary? So even though I don't agree with you on electoral politics, what I am doing is only helping you. So why are you spending your time defending your politicians instead of letting us tear down the Democrat establishment that you claim that you want to get rid of? How do you think that happens? That happens with us diverting people from caring about the two-party duopoly, and then you have good politicians who run on the right issues who win those over. I want to pass it to Sabrina before I go off again. You have anything else you want to
add? Just that people do ask sometimes, like, if you are going to run for office, what office should you run for? And I always say, if you do want to get involved in politics, I think your best bet is local politics. It's running for city council. City council controls the budgets. It's running for mayor. So I've seen people go into those positions and actually implement change. But I think once you start to get larger than that, that's when the chance for you to be corrupted is a lot easier.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not going to tell anyone, like, I think what you're saying is true. Local is like powerful. It works. I think that, yeah, I mean, but I'm not electoral politics or bust at all. Like, I really, I know
your work. Yeah, I know. That's why I knew that we can have these substance conversation, because the people who are like that, like the more like
I have
establishment
tankies. My
oriented.
show is a safe space for tankies. Let me tell you.
Yeah, it's like I'm talking about like the more like the TYT majority report style. They're more loyal to the party, so they cover these things in the lens of electoral politics. So this is
Right.
where the criticism of the left come more into. Me personally, and once again, I have a lot of people that are to my left. I didn't see anything that's unreasonable from you. I just stayed from my point of view. That's where I stand. And everyone got to fight in their own individual struggles. Because I can come at these issues from the point of view of a young black leftist, and I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm gonna vote for Jim Crow Joe. And I hold a whole piece about why I did it. Now, if you had Trump derangement syndrome and you're honest about it, I was never mad at you. I was never mad at those people that like I just hate Trump.
Yeah,
I didn't like the people who lied about Biden and the Democratic Party in order to make their point. But if you was honest, like, okay, I'm scared of Trump. He's stripping protection from me on so and so issue. I get it. What I was trying to do, I was trying to break the cognitive dissonance. But anyway, do you have anything else? I'll pass it back to you, Sabrina.
Are we going to another topic? I think.
Do we have time? One more topic.
Have one more?
How you feeling, Katie?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we usually go 90, but I always try to be respectful to my people's time. So, but I think we do one more topic because I wanted to discuss this.
And I just want to say one really quickly. There's the whole shaming of people to get into electoral politics or stay out of the outside of it. It's like pathetic. It's like, I mean, I had a lot of, one of the things I really enjoyed about my show was when I'll have debates. So I'll have people like, Aaron Mate or Eugene Puryear from Breakthrough News, and like people debating all this stuff and how it's important, whether it's important. And I'll never the chiding people, like we're the adults in the room stuff that you referred to with TYT. I mean, I think you probably know what side I'm on in that conflict. So anyway. Okay.
So this will be the next topic here because
and tankies are not all against electoralism.
I was very open. I started with this. I was very open, and I got attacked a lot by the topic of the conversation was the divide on the left, and there's a lot of the people that are more interested in defending the Democratic Party than actually speaking truth to power. So I was warning people about Kamala Harris from day one. We were talking. You was bringing up and you was roasting Hillary Clinton, which was amazing. We can do that all day. Why do you guys think Kamala Harris is such a failed politician? Kamala Harris was recruited by Hillary supporters a long time ago. She was invited to the Hamptons. And when she ran her campaign, she hired a ton of Hillary staff. And then she didn't get past Iowa. Despite that, the Democratic Party establishment wants her to be in power so bad. Wall Street wanted her to be in power so bad. The military-industrial complex wanted her to be in power so bad. Despite how incompetent she was, they still elevated her to a position of vice president. Now we are starting to see the Biden administration regret this, and it's glorious. Now there's a lot of discussion, and we had a lot of debates on the show before about how this story get out there, because these stories don't get reported on for no reason. When you have people from the Biden team leaking to the media, to Politico, to New York Times, these kind of stories, that doesn't happen for a reason, for no reason. This story explains exactly why, and now I get right to it. Here's give me a second to share screen for you guys. Democrats sour on Harris, worry that she cannot win in 2024. Now, people who've been watching my show, me and Jackie have been warning you guys this for about over a year now. It's funny how the neoliberal establishment Democratic media is always so behind, isn't it? Now, this is obvious because I point out all the time, despite the K-Hive narrative, that K-Hive was always a group of white women cosplaying as black people supporting her. And that was shown in the numbers. When she dropped out, she only had 1% black support. And now they're worried that if someone like Ron DeSantis runs in 2024, even Trump, they say even if Trump runs again, they don't like her chances. So I found this very funny because now we're seeing the neoliberal establishment panic, because at first it was the assumption that she's going to take over. Now you have the Biden administration leaking against her, and you have her own staff. Let me pull this story, and I'll give you guys thoughts. Okay, now you got Kamala Harris staff coming out against her, and pretty much admitting that she's a horrible boss. I'm gonna share this last article, and I'll give you guys thoughts on this. This from Politico. Once again, you gotta ask yourself, why are they leaking this to Politico? Not a healthy environment. Kamala Harris' office rife with dissent. And this is a story that's very similar when you had Kamala Harris' campaign that was falling apart because it was a campaign ran with nepotism, incompetence. And then in this story in a nutshell, to be very quick here, Kamala's staff and his office is ran in a way where there's no criticism of Kamala Harris. There's no criticism of anyone in charge. There's no accountability. So it's not surprising to me to see a capitalist, someone who couldn't even get any support and had to drop up before Iowa, run an incompetent vice presidential campaign. What you guys thought? I'll start with Katie, and then we can wrap up. You muted, Katie.
When they're, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. When they're like, yeah, we don't think she can win in 2024, 2022. I mean, it's like, yeah, she couldn't win ever. Like, she didn't win. She wasn't winning. She's not going to win 2024. If something happens to Biden, she's not going to win then either. And I think it is like satisfying to watch these people, fight amongst each other. I think that, I wrote a piece at FAIR about Simone Sanders, who's cited in this article that you read. And she has a lot of blood on her hands. I just constantly would like to remind people about that. She said the CDC said it was safe to vote. Literally the day that the CDC said it was not safe to gather people of 50 or more.
I remember that.
And, shout out to Brianna Joy Gray for finding that clip and tweeting it out and then getting accused of like voter suppression by the Near Tandons of the world. And what was incredible about that, though, is that so Brianna found this clip. She put it out there. And I remember when I was writing this piece about it, because people died, poll workers died, they got COVID, right? Like, when I was looking at that footage of her, and I didn't know when the CDC, it was possible that she could have said that without knowing the CDC's recommendation, because it was the same night that she did that interview. And then I realized when I got my hands on the original footage, like Chris Cuomo asked in the question, he was like, so Senator Sanders says that maybe we should pause the primary. What do you think? And Simone Sanders is like, I don't know what Senator Sanders is talking about, because and Chris Cuomo says the CDC says you can't have people more than 50 people at a time. That means voting is impossible in most places. And then Simone Sanders is like, I don't know what Senator Sanders is talking about. The CDC said it's safe to vote. It's like we vote during times of war, crisis, and I have trust in these governors. And if they think it's safe to vote and they can do it, then that's fine. Meanwhile, the governors in these states that she named, like Ohio, were fighting to pause them, and did pause them because they knew it was so dangerous. And that was, even for me, I mean, I'm pretty cynical about the Dems. That was such a disgusting moment to watch. Like, it was I mean, literally, again, politicians do this all the time. It just happens to not, it was like literally watching someone say right after being told the CDC says it's not safe to vote. And then she said, the CDC says it's safe to vote. Like, to be fair, usually when it's like Biden's such a hot mess that you can't keep track of when he's lying, because like you can't follow what he's saying. He'll like insult you, talk about like pony this, like listen, fat, all that stuff he does. But with her, she's like a rational person. So it was like extremely disturbing to watch. But yeah, I think Kamala, I mean, we all saw when she's like, it was a debate. It was a debate. Like, she comes off as psychopath also. Like, Biden comes off as like sociopath. They both do, but Biden comes off as like someone who can she comes off as having no personality.
Yeah, and you saw Simone Sanders won the sacrifice lives to win. And this is not new to Democrats and their mindset. And I'll pass it right to Sabrina. We can wrap up. Because we saw this with Nancy Pelosi and how she was negotiating in a way where Trump couldn't get a victory before the national election when it comes to COVID relief.
Yeah.
So they always do this. They always play with lives in order to win, because if they was really serious about getting people relief, they could have, but they didn't want to do that because they didn't want to give Trump a victory before the election. Just another example. But Sabrina, you got anything you want to add? And then we can wrap up.
I just want to say, like, when I was at Bernie's rally here in Boston, the news people were all like, "Oh, don't you guys feel bad having this rally here with this large crowd of people and COVID is around?" And that was actually before the height of COVID. That was before we found cases like here in the US. And they were making like Bernie feel like this really bad person because 10,000 people showed up at Boston Common, right? So, but at the same time, it's okay for Simone Sanders and the rest of the DNC to encourage people to go out and vote for Joe Biden. But had it been the other way around, it's just hypocrisy.
Yeah. Rachel Maddow was asking Bernie why he didn't drop out, saying, you know, there's a pandemic now.
Yep.
So I appreciate your time, and this was a fun conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
I appreciate you having this conversation with us. Where can they find you, Katie? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, definitely. So the Katie Halper Show, which is on YouTube. So youtube.com/the Katie Halper Show. Patreon, of course, patreon.com/the Katie Halper Show. On Twitter at Katie Helps. That's letter K, letter T, HALPS. And yeah, I definitely want to have you guys on.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that. Sabrina, you got anything coming up?
Yes. Tomorrow on my channel, I have an interview with Professor Richard Wolff. So that'll post tomorrow afternoon. And next week, all the women of FHL will be on Misty's show. Can I say Misty's show? Can I say her name on here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. It'll be Misty's show.
I love Misty.
July 14th at 7 p.m. It'll be all the ladies.
Awesome.
Yeah, we got a lot of great content. We upload every day, so make sure you guys hit the bell, because tomorrow we're gonna have 2 giant shows. We obviously have our main panel, the actual Hampton Leftists podcast with all the hosts, and I will also be hosting a 2-hour live stream. I will be talking to Max Blumenthal. Love that guy. He teaches me a lot about foreign policy.
Hilarious.
And then we're gonna talk to Jordan Charlton about some stuff he been covering on whistleblowers, and we're gonna have a great conversation. So 2-hour live stream. First hour will be Matt Blumenthal. Second hour will be Jordan Charlton. Then we got Revolutionary Jargon on Fridays as well. So we got a lot of great shows coming up. So make sure you guys keep an eye on that and check out Katie Harper. Thank you for coming on once again. I love the stuff you cover, and once again the energy that you cover it on. So thank you for coming on. It was great.
Thank you. Tomorrow 7 p.m. I'm streaming.
Nice,
Everyone subscribe to the youtube.com/the Katie Halper Show, please.
Awesome. Thank you guys for watching. This is Nick, also known as Social Cinema, Hampton Leftist. Sign off. Thank you guys.